everybody who are going to join us. My name is Volodymyr Khityak. I am academic manager of the program Master of Science in Technology Management. I will be happy if you will note me if you can't hear me or will be some problems. Just let me know. I hope you can hear me and I see you. Also, I will be grateful to all of you if we can share your video to see you. We are going to start. We're going to start, and our presentation will be about the program Master of Science in Technology Management, and especially I am happy to present updated program because we are going to offer new participants, new courses, new lecturers, and new experience as well. Before we started with Steven Russo, who are here and who will be present us new courses in intellectual property management, I would like to share some insights and some information about the Master of Science in Technology Management program to make you more clear about the courses and about the curriculum of the program. I would like to share my screen and I encourage you to give a question, to discuss and to make some comments as well. Okay, just a moment. I will share my screen and we'll start. Okay. No. Maybe somebody of you have heard about the program. I see that some of you or somebody has had the opportunity to study at this program. And the program Master of Science in Technology Management is a unique program in Eastern Europe. It's a specific program for technological leaders. The program designed for technological companies, C-level executives, technological leaders, chief technology officers, chief information officer, and everybody who lead technological directions at their companies from all of industries. Not only from IT industry, but we are going to involve and to provide the opportunity for participants from all of industry who lead the technological directions. Already we have 80 alumni who graduated the program. We have 20 participants who are going to finish their studying in June, and the average age of participants is around about 32 years. Who are our participants? Mostly they are owners and co-owners of IT companies. Also, we have C-level executives and managers who lead the technological directions in their companies, like a chief technological officer, chief information officers. We have 16 modules, 10 core modules, and 3 electives. And the schedule of the studying is very flexible and and everybody can combine job and studies. And the module duration is only 4 days per month. We have, as we call, 2 wings of the program in terms of studying. It's a technological wings, technological part of our curriculum, and also managerial part. Technological parts consist of the following courses that you can see here: IT strategies, R&D management, product management in IT high-tech companies, digital disruption and innovation management, and technological entrepreneurship. Also, we have business and management courses. So you can see the list of the courses here, and these courses covers the challenges, business challenges, and managerial issues that probably every of manager can meet in their career. And also, we provide the opportunity to hone your soft skills, like emotional intelligence, effective presentations, leadership, negotiations, etc. So participants can choose elective courses. We have a range of courses that you can choose, and you can learn something new that you are interested in. The part of studying is an international study tour to Israel. It's a 1-week duration tour that cover your interest in R&D, in innovations management, and in startup management. We visit R&D centers, high-tech corporations, startups, venture funds, etc. And the very important part of studying is the final project that should cover your business interest, your business part, and also to demonstrate your ability to write and think academically. To provide a master level project and that can support your business, that can develop your business in the future. Our professors, our lecturers represent the well-known institutions, BAS academic institution, and also business institution from the different countries and different institutions in the world, like a Carnegie Mellon University, Harvard Business School, etc. And also we provide the experts who can share their skills, their knowledge, and their new informations in the edge of the industries. And the format of learning is very flexible and interactive. It combines teamwork, visits, studies, etc. And also after graduates, you will have an opportunity to take two courses within 2 years after graduations for free. And as a master programs, we put some requirements for everybody who would like to enroll and to study as a program. Our aim is to form the very smart groups with some experience that you can share with each other. That is why we require the bachelor degree and at least 5 years of the work experience in IT or technology-related sphere, and also we require the managerial experience. For example, ability to lead small team, at least small teams, like 6 to 12 people. And also we require some level of English because program is work language of the program is English, and some skills in the project management, high moral and social standards, personal integrity, and maturity. This year, we are going to start in October in the fall. And the program duration is 22 months, and the first month is at least 1.5 years is dedicated to studying, and the 1.5 of years is mostly dedicated to your final project and working with mentors and with your academic leaders. The early bird price is valid till 1st June, and we encourage to use this opportunity. And if you have additional questions concerning enrollment or curriculum or studying formats, etc., you are free to contact me, to contact everybody in the Lviv Business School, and discuss about your specific questions. And I also encourage you to get more experience in Lviv Business School. Probably in two weeks, we are going to start a module in the new technological entrepreneurship. It is an open module for everybody who would like to join. And I encourage you to get such experience with the prominent investors and professors from UK that provide the new technological entrepreneurship course for our certificate programs. And as I mentioned, this course are open to everybody. And if you would like to develop your knowledge, develop your skills in startups, entrepreneurship, we will be glad to see you at this course. And as I mentioned, a program is updated, and it is why we are going to present it to you today, because we are going to present some new courses. And we started from courses in intellectual property management. We are going we strive to update courses according to the needs of the industry. And we detected that intellectual property management, intellectual property issues is very important for Ukrainian technological leaders. And this is why we asked Steven Russo, who are going to present his courses. We asked him to develop and to provide it for us, for our participants. And we are going to start it next year. The courses, and I just mentioned that except of the intellectual property management course, we are going to provide also new course in R&D management, and we also will present it next month, the course in R&D management. Today, but today we are glad to hear Steven Russo, who is global director of in smart cognitive city solutions at IBM. And Steven is our friend, our lecturers, professors. Also, he served in the Greek Catholic Church as a priest in USA. I give the words to him, and I'm glad to introduce him, and I hope he introduces that new course in intellectual property management. And also after his presentation, we will have some times for questions, for discussion, and I encourage you to put your question in maybe in format of comments or take in voice as it works for you. Stephen, glad to hear you here.
Thank you, Professor. So let me share my screen for a moment first to get us started. Okay, are you able to see that? Okay, just a moment. Expand this. So thank you, and good evening to everyone. I appreciate your time and attention here. I've had the opportunity to work with the Lviv Business School for a number of years and Ukrainian Catholic University, and have been very impressed with the degree of the professors, the organization, the students, and I'm happy to help out and share some of my background in this particular area. So as Vladko said, this is on intellectual property and really an intangible asset. So I'm going to take you through a quick summary of what the course will entail and why it is so important in and for business leaders. And many of you have experience in this area, and many of you have maybe some concerns and scars associated with things that have caused problems for you, things that have been done right as well that helped in your success. But essentially, if you think about it, your creativity, your ideas, your innovation, these are all keys to your success, your company's success, whether it be through a startup or through your own innovation or working with other larger companies. But if it's not handled properly by some simple and sometimes common mistakes or errors, or being careless in certain things, those great ideas and innovations can very quickly be someone else's success as opposed to your own. So I have worked in industry for over 30 years in a number of different areas, between research and product development to services, mainly in the IT space. My background is in engineering. Both software and electrical engineering is the basis of what my educational foundation has been. But I've worked in management and executive roles across those areas to bring new ideas, new technologies into commercial offerings and building businesses around them. So with that, let me just give a quick example. As was mentioned, I employed by IBM, and I wanted to use IBM as an example here on history. So the company is over 100 years old, and it has gone through many transitions over time, and it has had to because of the changing needs of our environment, of the community, of the world overall. In the early days, we made clocks. We made time clocks and simple solutions to help businesses. And that moved into technology with the creation of programming languages. IBM was the first to come up with the personal computer, and the early stages of what we would do there, to large mainframes, into new and changing ways of doing business. Along the way, and while this is a very busy chart, I don't intend to take you through all the details, we've had to reinvent ourselves. And part of that reinvention comes up with new ideas, new innovation, new intellectual property that needs to be handled and managed correctly. And not just ours, but intellectual property that we may bring in from the open source community. What does that mean to your solutions when you bring in a package from the open source community, and what do you need to worry about with that? What does it obligate you to in the creation of your solutions? How do you partner with other companies and being able to bring in their IP and still be able to protect your own interests? What happens when you jointly work with academic institutions, universities, and government entities, and have shared intellectual property? So all of these issues need to be thought of and dealt with in an organized and an efficient way. So I'll take you through some of the things that you should be concerned about with this as you are starting businesses. And again, given this course curriculum is designed for professionals, people who have experience, you may have experience in some of these areas. One of the things we do encourage is to be able to learn from each other, the students. So I bring in a set of experiences from my background, but also to learn from the experiences of the students as well, to be able to build more clear understanding of how to avoid problems and be able to move forward and create success and be able to make very profitable businesses. So one other thing that I did not mention, my responsibilities are global in nature. And this is very important when you're thinking about intellectual property, because the laws change by country. The willingness to protect the companies and the intellectual property varies by country. And I'll take you through some examples and studies that were done there. Some are very stringent on how they protect intellectual properties, others are not. So depending on where you're doing business, you need to take that into account as well. What is intellectual property? Very often we think of an idea, and an idea that we can patent, something that has government protection associated with it. And that patent may be at a country level, or may be part of a treaty that has been signed by many countries throughout the world that gives equal protection. But there's a lot more to intellectual property than that. Intellectual property also includes your trademarks. Your copyrights, trademarks being your brand identity, which is extremely valuable. I've heard, and I don't have the exact number, But Disney, the trademark of Mickey Mouse, is worth literally billions on the market if you think about the association with the brand. The 8-barred logo of IBM, in the same way. There are studies that have been done how valuable those trademarks are. In addition, the trade secrets you may have, which is more than just technology. It could be the way that you do things, some new innovative ideas to make manufacturing more efficient. And this goes across industry segments. So all of these different things, how you license your business models, your technology components, ideas, various trade secrets of how you do business. All of these things are considered to be intellectual property. How do you manage and protect all of that? It can be overwhelming if it's not thought of in an organized way. Just some simple examples, and this, of course, is at a very high level. Think of trademarks. While they're very important, but they are somewhat simplistic in the fact that you have some trademark, it is registered, it's identified to your company, but it brings with it brand recognition, which is critically important. Copyrights of being able to copyright either documents or certain symbols or artwork that's very specific to, again, your identity, to being able to patent ideas and be able to understand what is in fact registered as your unique ideas. And that does not necessarily only mean technology, but it, again, can be business processes. They can be patented as well. And then in the far right, this idea of trade secrets, which really encompasses all of these other things, which can be a combination of personal notebooks, it can be a combination of patterns, it can be a combination of business processes, business models that you use, various deep learning algorithms, neural nets that you have created as you get more sophisticated into various types of technology, as well as discussions can have trade secrets embedded within them, and being able to understand what is yours, what may be ours in that we are partnering together or working together at a business, and what may be someone else's, and being able to manage that in an effective way. Also things like contamination, where I bring in a partner and we have an agreement and they share confidential information. If we decide then not to partner, I need to ensure that I don't use that confidential information that was shared in my products, or I can be brought up on various charges for theft of their IP. There's a number of different constraints like that that we need to think about. So this is gets very complex and very deep. The course will go through a lot of the details. Here, I just give you a quick set of examples to give you just a taste. Just to think about this further, some common mistakes when handling IP. And I found in an article that 8 out of 10 startup failures are due in some way to IP issues. That's significant. Now, there are a number of things that can cause startups to fail. As we all know, there is a high degree of failure with startups, from losing motivation to losing funding, and many others. But if we dig into that, many of those, and 80% approximately, are caused by some issues with IP, whether or not that IP is in fact unique. Someone else already had it patented, therefore this idea is not very good. I was recently, a few months ago, approached by a colleague about a startup. And he had what seemed to be a great idea. I won't spend the time to go through the details of this. And he said, look, I haven't seen this out in the market anywhere. And I got very excited about it. And I said, okay, let's look at this in an organized way and start to do the research. And what I found is there were a few others that had extremely good brand recognition and were extremely well financed, and they already had similar ideas. Now, these ideas, while they were seemed to be unique, were in fact not unique, and others had a start ahead. So we look at it now. Do we still venture into an area like that? How do we avoid any sort of intellectual property violations and so forth? So I decided that said, this does not make sense. I don't think this is a good business venture because of the research that we did up front. So it's very important to do that research to decide, are your ideas unique? Has somebody else thought of it? Do you have a different twist to it? Am I in need of licensing intellectual property from someone else to build into my idea? But not identifying what your assets are is the number one problem. And very often we take for granted even the discussions that we may have, that they do in fact include some level of intellectual assets that can be very important to our businesses. Not having proper confidentiality controls, bringing people in, even with partners. If I have two partners that are starting a business, being able to ensure that if one leaves, they have ownership of that IP. All of a sudden, they take that ownership elsewhere and make it impossible for the business to continue. Also having an overall plan, and we'll go over the details of what this means of having an overall intellectual property plan and what that takes into account. Another potential failure is people playing lawyer by getting online, doing some simple research, and assuming that you have the legal expertise to be able to handle certain aspects of IP. One of the things I like to say to my team is one of the important skills I believe you need to have in the business world is to know what you don't know. To be able to realize when you need others to come in as experts and to be able to help you fill in the gaps and understand not only what makes sense in your jurisdiction, but what makes sense in other jurisdictions. In the case of legal representation, as I mentioned earlier, I have a global responsibility. I have a US lawyer that I work with very closely on various issues on product development and research and so forth. But when I'm looking to sell a product in another country or partnering with a company or individuals that may exist elsewhere, I need to understand the laws in those countries and those jurisdictions as well, and ensuring that I have the proper confidentiality agreements. I've just recently signed a confidentiality agreement with a Spanish company that we will be working with, but they have operations throughout the world. And it took us a few weeks to negotiate certain fine points because of our additional partnerships that we have elsewhere and protecting the rights of both companies. Researching your competition. As I mentioned before, not understanding who's out there and what they currently have and what is truly yours or maybe someone else's, that it is an idea that has already been thought of and already patented. That does not necessarily mean you should stop. What it may mean is you need to approach the owners of that IP and either look to partner or potentially license that IP, which is very possible. And forming the proper agreements that you have. Again, understanding what's yours, what may be, I'll use the word ours in the combination of yourself and other partners you may be working with, and what may belong to someone else and how you deal with that, and being able to draw those lines clearly. Annual losses associated with IP theft. So there are some situations that you may compromise the integrity of your company by not protecting secrets and someone getting to market before you. But then there are other situations where there is outright theft. Cyber crime, theft of IP is a very large business today. I'm sure all of you have encountered in different ways various types of fraud and theft of not only your financial assets, but potentially your ideas. And it's very difficult to calculate the full losses here. But in the US, it was estimated that over 600 billion is lost to IP theft. In Europe, almost 500 billion. Japan, these are just three examples, adding up to over $1 trillion. And this is per year. So if you think of that's a massive amount of money that is lost because of potential carelessness or that others have threatened and stolen IP. I will tell you there is one product that we had sold, you can guess, I won't use the country names, into a country in the Far East. And within 17 minutes, that product was pirated and it was being sold in the open market, actually through eBay. So it was already planned ahead of time that they were able to reverse some of the license constraints that we had and be able to sell it on the open market. So those sort of things are just warning signs. If it makes you paranoid, well, it should, because these are things that need to be considered and can mean life or death to your business, whether it be a startup or your contribution to a larger business entity. What will the course cover? So the course will cover, I go through these 8 areas. First, understanding what I call the crown jewels. What are the most important aspects of the intellectual property that you may have? Being able to have a plan. I say either plan or be played. If you don't have a plan, someone can compromise the vulnerabilities and the holes that you may have in your plan. Be able to protect it. So being able to protect it through the patent laws, for example, or through other confidentiality controls and agreements. There are a number of ways to protect it, and we'll go through what those are as part of this course. Considerations, again, what is mine, my personal ownership, my own ideas, what may belong to a group of people that you may be working with in collaboration. What is ours in, again, combination of working with other partners that are on the outside of your company. So you as an individual, you as a member of a group within a corporation, or you as part of an ecosystem of partners, whether it be academic institutions or other companies, bringing all of those things together as considerations for intellectual property. Open source. Open source is an interesting area. I'm sure all of you in some ways have experienced or are using open source packages. It's a way for us to get things built faster, to be able to share ideas and collaborate on a global basis. But there's specific types of licenses associated with open source, some of which anything that you create with that package, if you agree to the license, you have to then return everything that you have created back to the open source community. So essentially, you're giving away the ownership of anything that you may derive out of that open source package. In some ways, you may be willing to do that to help your brand recognition and to be able to contribute to the community overall. But if you're not aware of those license constraints, this can cause some problems where you realize something that you own or some very profitable business, all of a sudden, many others are cropping up and taking your market share. Partnerships. How do you partner? And when you partner with another company, you may create things together, but you also will be bringing individual intellectual property in from each side. How do you ensure that you are protecting that intellectual property? And then this idea of contamination. Where if someone gets into the detailed understanding of how something works, and that's confidential, proprietary, patented intellectual property of another company, sometimes it's difficult for them then to, if you decide to part ways, to be able to use that knowledge. And that also transpires into the open source community. We have a group that looks at what we call internally the pedigree of open source. Let's say, for example, someone worked for Amazon or for Microsoft or some other large company, and while they created a package and they donated it to the open source community, they did it with confidential understanding, and they had proprietary knowledge that belonged to that other company. While a small startup may not be a target because they don't have enough financial resources to somebody to spend the legal funds to go after them. But if a large company like IBM or some other reasonably large company was starting to use that, they could come after them for infringement on those rights. So again, needing to understand what you have and what you're working with. Warranties. How do you keep from paying out big bucks, indemnity, if someone is hurt, or God forbid that someone gets killed by something that was created with technology that you had used or that you had brought in from somewhere else, being able to deal with that. And then how are you licensing? In the end, how do we make money? Businesses need to be profitable. How are you making money from these ideas? In some cases, there are companies who do research, they patent their ideas, and then they license those ideas out. They don't actually create products. Their product is intellectual property and the licensing of intellectual property. In some cases, a startup that is, they decided that maybe the market is not ready for them, they can sell or license those patents. IBM has been, over the last 20 years, the largest, has received the largest number of patents per year for, again, I believe it's the last 20 years. And there is a whole area of the business that, while there may be many of those patents that we don't use directly, we license them out to other companies for their use. So money can be made, again, with your ideas if they are, again, well protected and understood how, in fact, you protect them. So it will be a comprehensive course going through a lot of these details with case studies to give you some ideas of what I call the good, the bad, and the ugly. What were some cases of things that went very well, where things started to go bad, and where it became disastrous, to be able to learn from those successes and learn from those failures as well. This was an interesting study. I'll take you through it. It was a study that was done, and I only show you one piece of this, by a commission called the Intellectual Property Rights Protection Group that was sponsored by the U.S. Embassy, and the study was conducted by the Kyiv National Economic University. But it shows what is called the SWOT model of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and specifically for Ukraine. And what I look at is where you see weaknesses and problems, there's always a corresponding opportunity. So clearly what we see with the university, with Lviv Business School, a society that has a high degree of education, opportunities coming forward, strong institutions and programs like the one that we're talking about here that give great strengths, a high potential for scientists and researchers, an environment that's being encouraged for startups, entrepreneurship, innovation. All of these type of strengths exist within Ukraine. I've been very impressed personally to be able to see and experience this. But one of the downfalls you have is currently the laws, the IP protection laws, are rather weak, and the enforcement of the laws that are in place are rather weak. And what this means is that you need to be aware of that and understand how, in addition, you may need to protect yourself and not just rely on the government and so forth for protection. So there are opportunities. There are opportunities for ways to continue to grow your businesses, to be able to look at how you market and sell things on the outside of the outside of the country borders, and be able to grow even more an innovative society as we see forming, and be able to hopefully influence some protection, some additional protection that is possible. One of the threats, and this is done looking at it from a country economic perspective, and this is something actually that the US has experienced greatly, is this idea of a brain drain. If I use the US as an example, in the industrial revolutionary years, where there was great difficulty and oppression in different parts of the world, various times, a lot of very brilliant people came to the US and were educated, trained, and were able to create very successful and profitable businesses. What we're seeing now with the economic conditions changing and improving in certain countries is what we call the brain drain, where they may come to be educated, but then leave and go elsewhere to be able to build their businesses and build their personal wealth and build economic wealth for the country. And there is a concern that in the Ukraine, that while that has happened in the past, and I know many large businesses, and I'm sure you do, that were started by Ukrainian founders in the US, but that idea of how do you maintain the skill base, and you'll need this also for your various companies. Now, the world is becoming a much smaller place, so my teams are scattered in various parts of the world. I collaborate with many different places. Matter of fact, even with companies and universities in Ukraine and elsewhere, we are still to this day working together on various projects. So how do you deal with that set of skills and be able to work with that? So an analysis, and this is a deep study, we'll go through some of what they have found, and again, areas of weakness, which create corresponding opportunities, and areas of strength that can be maintained and learned from. So with that, as I start to wrap up and give us some time for questions here, all intellectual property revolves around innovation, to be able to learn from failures on how to succeed and also learn from successes, to be able to look at market impact and be able to look at technology progress and even process progress, from incremental to looking at various breakthroughs where you may have a breakthrough of doing something in a completely new and innovative way that was done in the past, and be able to deal with that, to disruptive, where I'm completely upsetting the market and not just breaking through a barrier that may have existed before. Let me take a step back because I may have confused things. Breakthrough technology is I've got some barrier that has stopped me in the past. Either there is an infrastructure issue, and now I found a way to overcome it with new innovation and new intellectual property, to a disruptive model. And disruptive models very often are not just the technology, but the business models, business processes around the idea, around the solution, that are patentable and need to be protected, to this idea of completely game changing. There are many companies that have completely changed, as I mentioned, some of the examples with IBM, where we have gone through a number of changes and reinventing ourselves. To think about companies like Kodak. I'll use them as an example. Kodak was a large camera and film manufacturer. Interestingly enough, they were one of the first companies to come out with and patent the idea of a digital camera. But because the majority of their revenue was coming in through developing film, they decided not to push it forward. Well, they ended up declaring bankruptcy because they didn't see the world changing, and others took share of IP that they in fact owned. And we see many examples of that. So we'll take you through some of those examples where a company may have created and owned the IP, but they didn't protect it because they didn't think it was valuable, and others took advantage of that and used that innovation to change the whole market sphere. One other example I'll mention very quickly, and this is an Israeli example of innovation failure to success, or how you can now start to take some ideas and reuse it. So here is a situation, and I'll go through it very quickly. Some of you may be aware, where there was a group that decided they had a swath of land in the desert, in the Israeli desert, and they decided they wanted to farm this. Well, you need water to farm, difficult to farm in the desert. They decided to dig a very deep well, and so that they would have water for irrigation. What came out of the well was warm, salty water. If the objective is purely agricultural farming, then it becomes a disaster, and they were not able to to farm because this water cannot be used to nourish plants and trees. What they determined is, with salty water, what can they do? They decided to change their model and then start to farm fish. They found that certain types of fish, because of their waste would reduce the salinity of the water and fertilize the water at the same time, in which case they were then able to use the water and irrigate crops. So what came out of this was an initial idea that by many standards would have become a failure. They changed that to be able to now farm fish and to be able to irrigate farmland. And also another side effect of that was what's called drip irrigation. Drip irrigation, because you spray water in the hot sun, most of it gets evaporated into the air, and you lose that and the plants don't get nourished. But to be able to use drip farming to give the plants water just at their base and at a small amount in a way that less is evaporated into the air. And that is used throughout the world today. So they took certain objectives. They took what was intellectual property from that and mutated the way it was being used for constantly looking at how to reinvent themselves, and came up with very profitable businesses and intellectual property now, which is licensed and used through various products throughout the world. So I went through that very quickly, but to give you an idea of some of the innovation here. I have at the top of this is an example too. We'll go through a number of case studies like this and the specific intellectual property that may have been considered to be intangible or not understandable that they really needed to protect during this time. So with that, I'll leave you with some quotes and open for some questions by this individual that I'm sure we all recognize this picture. You can't solve problems with the same thinking that got you there. And this constant thinking in new ways, that is intellectual property. Those are your trade secrets that you need to have a plan on how you preserve and protect. Another quote that I like very much is, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about the solution. So the problem and how you approach it and understanding what needed to be done, again, that's where the intellectual property and intellectual assets are. And then this idea of continually solving problems. As we continually solve problems, how we solve the problems, the derivative or the side effect of that is our intellectual property and intellectual assets. And we don't do it alone. We do it in sharing with others. So as we share it, again, we need to know what's ours, what may belong to someone else, and what we decide to come together and protect together. So with that, let me stop and turn it back over to the professor for some questions. Happy to go through some of the details here. I went through a very quick summary of what the course will entail. And this is just one of many exciting courses that you saw a quick summary of for this program. So with that, let me stop for now. I thank you for your attention, and I will stop sharing and we can turn it back over for questions.
Thank you, Stephen. Dear participants, dear friends, please don't hesitate to put some questions, both oral and written here. And Stephen, I'm open to talk with you. Who will be first?
I know it's always difficult for the first person. Also, I will mention, if people don't feel comfortable or if you think of questions afterwards, we can share my contact information for you to ask questions at a later time as well. So that's fine. But just to open the discussion here, if you think about intellectual property, maybe I can ask for some examples from your own work where you may have seen some problems, or where you have seen either ideas stolen or that it wasn't protected properly and caused difficulty in your business. Does anyone like to bring up maybe an example of what you've seen, or also what you would like to see included, maybe that we did not cover. I can tell you whether or not that is on our syllabus and our agenda.
Okay, may I ask you, maybe I will be first, and then we can, it can encourage the rest of us. I would like to see, or how do you feel the small or middle entrepreneurship could organize the framework of IP protection? Because it sounds like a very expensive effort to do it. We need a lawyer, we need some people who can manage it. What the first steps small entrepreneurship should undertake to empower their business in respect of intellectual property?
Excellent question, Professor. And the two things that I'd say are important. So first of all, it's not as expensive as you would assume sometimes. When we think of the lawyers and everything that needs to be done, the expense can be much more to your business and potentially cause failure if you don't handle this. But having a plan, being able to put together, and we'll go through as part of the course, the intellectual property plans and what that should take into account. So there are a set of items, approximately 12 areas that you need to be concerned with in how you put an agreement together for your employees or yourself, your partners, and down to what you would patent and having controls and processes. So very often what we find is it's more of being organized and that everyone understands the importance of intellectual property and how they need to handle it and protect it. Well, first of all, I should say identify it, handle it, and protect it. So part of the course will take us through that plan, and having an intellectual property plan is a key aspect.
Thank you, Steve. And we have a question in the chat from Vadim. During development, some product already start pitching, sharing my idea with other. Should I start thinking about IP on that stage?
Yes, you should, especially if you have some what you consider to be a new and innovative idea, even if you're not sure if others have it yet. Depending on who you share it with, anything you share can be used and can be done by someone else. So understanding and having that initial level of trust of who you share that with is important. So I would say you should always be thinking about that. And this is another aspect of the course, is to put you into the mindset of being able to understand and identify and really incorporate it into the way that you manage your own lives and the way that you do business. What should be kept confidential.
Thank you. Guys, who have the questions else?
I have, hello. Is there an idea to implement a single international register of intellectual property, like patents or trademarks, so on?
There is a something called a PCT, which we'll go over as well, which is an international treaty that is for patent and intellectual property rights. I can't remember how many countries. I believe there's over 100 countries today that participate in that. But remember that each country has their own laws. So there are groups that are trying to do that. This international commission is intended to protect IP. So it's important to see if you have a patent registered, if it is done by an entity that is part of that overall pact, which gives you protection. So if you, in the US, for example, if you patent something, you then have protection in that 100 plus countries. So we'll go through the details of the that treaty and what it entails and how it can help protect. So there are international groups that are already in the process of that, but it's not 100%. So that you need to realize. And various countries have different levels of enforcement. So while the law can be there, as we know, we can all have a certain law, but are those countries willing to enforce it? And that's part of when you sign the treaty agreement, those countries do agree to some level of enforcement. Thank you.
I also would like to give the next questions if nobody else are going to do it. My question is about the course, the future course content. For example, what I think about. Sometimes we are in the role of intellectual, we are in the role of seller, and sometimes we are in the role of buyers, because sometimes we need to involve the other intellectual property to buy it, to develop our technology, or to develop our business. And Steve, please share with us some perspectives of courses, some ideas of the courses. Will we cover this side of this part of business, to buy intellectual property, to invest in it?
Absolutely. So we have this concept of what we call in the company inbound intellectual property and outbound intellectual property. So in some cases, I may find that I have some good ideas, but they need to be, in order to make it into a production product, I need something that may be owned by someone else. So I have ways I can either partner with them, or I can license it. And it depends on how I want to incorporate those together. If it's a matter of a product that has intellectual property that can sit side by side with mine, I don't need to rebrand it. Or if I want to what we call OEM it into it, so I want to rebrand it, and I have a license agreement. So there are different arrangements for that. So we have some models that we will take you through that have been successful, of how you bring in technology, bring in intellectual property, and how you also share intellectual property, and then the combination, something that I may have created together with someone else, which may be a derivative from two different groups, but now is the shared entity of two companies or two individuals. It could be working together. So that's very important. And what we are finding more and more, those consortiums or those groups of partners are essential. Part of my responsibility in the company is also partnerships, to identify where I need help. I'll give an example. I'm working on a project to monitor and manage civil infrastructure, to avoid collapses and disasters in civil infrastructure. I have excellent technology solutions for that, but what I don't have is the subject matter expertise in the company, the civil engineering expertise of understanding defects and their structural. So again, understanding what I don't, knowing what I don't know, and being able to bring that in. So I'm now partnering with another company that has that subject matter expertise, to be able to combine it with our intellectual property to create an offering for the market.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, I think it's quite tricky problems of intellectual property management. I understand the complexity of it. Maybe somebody just would wonder wondering about the course or about the master of program technology master programs in Lviv Business School. You are free to contact me. You are free to contact Steven, and we can share some additional information if you need. And I encourage you to be in touch with us and to to visit our events. We are going to go offline because we are now, this great news that we are we are finished. We ended our red zone restrictions, and the next our module that I mentioned in new technological entrepreneurship will be offline, will be on the campus at Lviv Business School. And I encourage you to join us and to contact us if you have some questions about the program or about the specific topics like intellectual property or other courses that we are going to provide you. And be in touch. And I wish you a good evening, good night, and good weeks, and Easter.
Yes, and we hope to see you in the program. And again, if there are any other questions, please reach out. I'm happy to collaborate on this or other topics that may be of interest to you.